Welcome. We're going to talk OPNsense, specifically the new feature that was introduced into 24.7.3, which is snapshots that you can access directly from the user interface. The snapshots allow you to take a snapshot, funny enough, of your current running system, and then if you'd like to test some configuration changes or run a system upgrade and ensure nothing breaks, you can easily revert back to a last known good working state of your firewall. I'm really proud to see this part of OPNsense. I helped initially introduce this into OPNsense and work with the dev team to bring this to you. So there's no subscription required, doesn't require official hardware. This is free for everybody to use as of 24.7.3, which is the latest version of OPNsense as of today, which is the 3rd of September 2024. It does require that OPNsense is installed on the ZFS file system, as the snapshots are functionality of ZFS. Another thing is, if you're running OPNsense virtualized, then this might not be a feature that you're interested in. If you're running OPNsense on XCPNG or Proxmox, for example, then you'd use the tools built into your hypervisor to manage your snapshots, restore system states, and things like that. But if you run it on bare metal, this is a great feature, and I'm really proud that this is now part of OPNsense. So let's dive in, and I'll show you how to use them.
Sheridan Computers, IT, Communications, Support.
The new snapshots functionality you can find under the system menu, but you need to be running 24.7.3 as I said, and this is on 24.7.1. So I'm just going to system, firmware, updates, and I'm just going to update to the latest version. So let me just do this, check for updates. And there we go, we've got 24.7.3. And you can see in the release notes it says add snapshots, boot environments, support by the MVC and API, contributed by Sheridan Computers. And this is what we want. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Scroll down to the bottom, I'm going to update, okay. So we've got the notice, a critical upgrade is in process, so do not turn off the system, so we just need to wait for this to finish. I'm just going to wait for this to reboot and come back online. Okay, log back in. So as you can see, we are now on 24.7.3. And if we go into system, under here, you can see that we've now got this new snapshots feature. So we'll go ahead and click snapshots. By default, you'll only have one listed when you get started. And obviously this is the default snapshot. Looking under active, you can see that we've got two flags. We've got N and we've got R. So N means it's active now, and R means the snapshot that will be activated after a reboot. And obviously we can see the size and when it was created. So if we wanted to upgrade the system, I know we're up to date at the moment, so we're not going to be able to, but what we could do is click on this plus here to add a new snapshot. If we do add, then give it a name. So by default, this may change. This is new code functionality. So by default, it comes up with the current timestamp, so you can change this to 24.7.3 working and save that. Now as you can see, we have two separate snapshots. So this 24.7.3 is the same as the default because we've not made any changes to it. Now if there was an upgrade available, I don't think there will be because we've just done it, but we can go to firmware, updates, and it's on the latest one. So yeah, there's no update available for us. If there was, we could go ahead and continue. And if for some reason it didn't work, we could go back over to system, head across to snapshots, and then we could revert back to the 24.7.3 working by simply hitting activate. Now you'll notice these fields have just changed. So 24.7.3 working now has an R against it. It means that when we reboot, that one will be active. And this one is showing that it's active now. So in order to boot into a snapshot, you need to mark it as active by heading over here to activate, and then activate the one that you want to boot into. And restarting the system will put it back into the state that you was at. For example, let's so we've got a working one here. Let me go into interfaces, sorry, firewall. Let's go into settings. No, I don't want that. Rules. One, for example. Now, if I introduce something here that basically broke the system settings, so let me add a new rule. In fact, let me just go into interfaces. One. Say I disable this interface. Apply the changes. That system would now be broke. We've got no way of accessing the internet. So check for updates. Could not find the repository. Could not select the mirror. So we broke some firewall rules. So as well as being used for updates, they can be used for making changes. And if I go back into snapshots, and then I mark this 24.7.3 working as active. So as you'll notice under interfaces 1, we've just disabled it. So I'm going to go into system, snapshots. We've marked this one as this 24.7.3 working. We've marked it active, and you can see that it's got an arm against it, meaning that it'll be active on reboot. And this one's active now, this default, which is why it's got the N against it. So let's go ahead and reboot. Power, reboot. Just wait for the web interface to appear. Go ahead and log back in. So I did check for updates. This should be working now. As you can see, it is, because we've reverted back to the last working state. So let me head back to system. And we'll go to snapshots again. So snapshots on the system. So you can see that the flags under active have changed. So under 24.7.3 working, we've now got N and R, meaning that it's now active, and it will also be active on reboot. And again, to make the default one active on reboot, we could just go and activate it. The R appears to show that it's going to be active on reboot. The N is still under 24.7.3 working, because that's the one that's currently active, the one that's active now. So let me just set that back to active. So we made some changes, and this default one is no longer any use to us because it was broke. So it was testing something, so we'll go and delete that. So now we've only got our one working snapshot. So if we were to make any changes to the system, we could break it, as we've not got any more snapshots. So we want to create another one. So what I'll do is click on the edit here, and we'll go ahead and rename it. So let's set the name. So we've got 24.7.3 working, and I'm just going to change that back to default. So identify our default boot environment. And now you can see we're back where we was. So we've got default, active now and on reboot, and we're fully back working as we was. So I say we could have made some firewall rule changes, installed packages if we were just testing them. We could have done a full system update and been able to revert back to the current system state. So this is a really amazing feature, and I'm glad it's in OPNsense. But again, if we was going to make more changes, then we don't want to make them to the currently active one, because it's our only snapshot, which means that we've got nothing to fall back on. So what we can do is go ahead and click the plus button again here, and we'll just create another one. And we'll just rename that to, say, default working, and save it. And we now have, so we can now continue making changes to our system. If we tried to make some config changes and they didn't work, then we can do that again. We've created the default working that we can fall back on. When you create these, it's probably a good idea to give them some kind of good naming convention. So I'm going to delete that by heading over to delete and go, yeah, remove it. So we can see that's now gone. So what I'd generally do is create the new snapshot and give it a proper name. So 24.7.3, for example. So no matter what we do to this, we've always got our working 24.73 to fall back on. Let's have a look at some of the other options. So obviously we've got this activate here, identified by the check mark, to activate the next boot environment on reboot. We've got edit, which you can just edit the name, so you can change that to what you want, working. But you'll notice we've got clone. So what does that do? Well, if you go ahead and create a new boot environment, we'll click add. It's going to base it off the current one that we've got. So if we create, we're in default, so we've got default active now, default active on reboot. So if we was to create another one, it's basically default copy. Which is effectively what we're doing, because we're just making a snapshot of the current default system before we've made any changes to it. But let's delete that. This clone feature allows you to create a snapshot from an existing one. So if we wanted to clone one, even if we've made some changes and we wanted to go back and do something in this 24.73 working, or we wanted to test something under that, we can clone. Now we've got the name, 24, that didn't work. Did I press the one button? No. Oh, sorry, ignore me. So by clicking clone, it will make a snapshot of an existing snapshot. So if we go 24.7.3 working, if I go and clone this, 24.7.3 breakage or whatever. So you'll notice this one says size 0, and that's because it's exactly the same as that one, and it's a snapshot. So if we was to make any changes to our current system, obviously we can revert back to 24.73 working. If for some reason we wanted to test something under this snapshot, then we can just clone the snapshot and it will create a snapshot of the system from that existing snapshot. So that's the difference between clone and create. So whilst they may look the same, if you click plus, it comes edit snapshot name, and then obviously we can create a snapshot from our default environment, delete that. If we was to clone one, then it would be a copy of that one. Let me spell copyright. Copy of that one. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what boot environments are all about. But what if something breaks and you can't access the web interface? So let's do that again. Let me remove that. And I'm going to change this rule again. So I'm going into firewall. Interfaces, WAN. And again, I'm going to disable our WAN interface. Save that. Apply the changes. So remember, if we're in snapshots, we've got this working one, so that's a backup before we disabled that interface. Previously, exactly like I just did. This one is the one that we've modified and we broke the interface. So what happens if you can't access the web UI to actually restore that snapshot? Let me show you. So what we're going to do is just check that that is actually broken. So I'll go to System, Firmware, Updates, and it's broken. So say that's our broken system. What I'm going to try and do is log into Proxmox, and I'll pull up our console. So if I pull up the console for our current firewall, you can see we're here, and it's the same one. And if we log in, that should be broke as well. So log in with root, password 8, and then do ping, I don't know, Google for example. It's broke. Help, what do we do? So this is, you'd be doing this obviously not from your hypervisor. You'd use the built-in hypervisor tools, but on bare metal, this is just to simulate it and show you exactly what happens. So now if we restart this machine, I'll just do reboot, sorry. So now we'll just wait for the system to reboot, and then when we get the boot menu appear, we can select our boot environment. So when the menu appears, we want 6 for kernel default. No, we don't. We want 8, sorry, for boot environments. So you can see we've got the active boot environment is the default one, and it says 2 of 2. So if we press 2, you can see that's now changed, and that's how you can select them. So if you've got like 5 boot environments, you can press 2 to go through them all, and then we can do boot into that one. So now we should be back running again. And you can see here on the console, it does actually say 24.7.3 working is the boot environment that we're in. So now if we go permission denied, never mind, it's a firewall rule. But just to show you, we can go back into the system, root, password, system, snapshots. So now we've got 24.7.3 working, which is active now. But if we reboot the system, our broken one's going to be active. We can confirm if we go into firmware, updates, and then we check for the updates. We can see that that's now working. But if we reboot, we'll be broken again. So what we're going to do is now go back into snapshots. And because the default one is going to be active on reboot, we actually want to change that, and we're going to make the working one active on reboot. So again, the default one's broken. So I can go ahead and delete that. Yep. And then I can rename this one again. Back to default. And I can create another one from where we are now, working. I'm going to do 24.7.3 working. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how the snapshots work. I will do another video showing how to use them during the upgrade process, but it's exactly the same process. Once you upgrade to the next major version, if you've got 24.7.3 working, 24.8 or 24.7.4 comes out, then we can, from our default one, run the system upgrade, and if something doesn't work, we can select our previous snapshot and carry on working into that and switch between the two. But I just wanted to explain how it works, because there's been a few people asking on the OPNsense forums, there's been a few people asking on Reddit. So I just figured I'd cover that video. Nobody else did yet. So let me switch this back. I hope that helps, and you can see the power behind the boot environments, or snapshots as they're known in OPNsense. They're very, very powerful, but remember that they are tagged to the configuration. So if you make firewall changes, VPN changes, or anything in one boot environment, they won't carry across. So they are a safe way for you to play around updating your config, testing things, and reverting back. But just remember, they won't persist. Any changes that you make in one boot environment won't persist to the next. If you found this video useful, please consider liking it. Consider subscribing to the channel. There was a lot of work in bringing these to you. If you'd like to buy us a coffee or support the channel, there's plenty of links below that you can do that. Thank you. See you in the next video.